Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. On the show tonight.
You have a right to make medical decisions without fear.
Those seeking abortions in Chicago now have further protections. We share the details.
Our economy remains resilient.
Is America heading towards a recession or are concerns overblown? We talk with 3 economists.
When I think of the patients that are traveling from Wisconsin and having to navigate crossing state borders for healthcare.
Less than 20 miles from Wisconsin, doctors are helping meet abortion needs. We have a live report from Suburban Waukegan. Frustrated riders complain about ghost trains and buses. A look at some of the challenges facing the CTA post-pandemic.
I'm Angel Ito, and coming up tonight, I'm live in Grant Park, talking all things music, creativity, and finding your voice with the next generation of future Lollapalooza headliners.
We're here to help them in their language.
Suburban libraries are welcoming Spanish-speaking Latinos with open arms and open books.
And Paris, as you mentioned, I'm in Waukegan as part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Now, Waukegan is about 35 miles north of downtown Chicago. Community leaders are serving a large population of Spanish-speaking residents with resources. And meanwhile, plans are underway for a temporary casino. We have that and much more. But first, I send it back to you.
A lot to dig into. Thanks, Joanna. We'll look forward to that. And now on to today's top stories. Lollapalooza is underway and will be in Grant Park for the next 4 days, but word comes late this afternoon that it will be there for at least another 10 years. Lollapalooza creator Perry Farrell told WGN News today that the mayor has given the festival a 10-year extension in Grant Park. The mayor's office referred questions on this subject to the festival's producer this evening, and we'll have much more live from the festival in just a bit. And Mayor Lori Lightfoot says Chicago agencies will not cooperate in any other state's investigation into abortion care that takes place in the city. The mayor signed an executive order today prohibiting state agencies from being involved in any proceeding from an anti-abortion state should they investigate an out-of-state person coming to get an abortion here. We'll have more on this from Heather Sharon in just a bit as well. Another prominent Illinois elected official comes down with COVID. This time it's U.S. Senator Dick Durbin. Durbin announced this morning he had contracted the virus, but says thanks to vaccines and booster doses, he is only experiencing mild symptoms. This comes on the heels of Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who just recovered from COVID, and President Joe Biden, who also recently recovered in the last several days. And up next, more on the mayor's executive order banning Chicago police from investigating those seeking abortions. So please stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabee family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And as we mentioned earlier, Mayor Lightfoot took action today to create more protection for those seeking an abortion in the city. Lightfoot signed an executive order that bans Chicago police from cooperating with probes into those who travel to Chicago for abortions or their doctors.
We will not collaborate with people who want to deny women's rights.
WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more. So, Heather, tell us more about what this executive order entails.
Well, it bans any city agency, including the Chicago Police Department, from helping another state, another law enforcement agency, investigate anyone who traveled to Chicago to receive abortion care. It also applies to investigations of the doctors or nurses who provided that care. Now, it's modeled on the city's longstanding ordinance that prohibits federal immigration agents from being helped by Chicago police to detain or deport immigrants.
And the move comes right after some progressive city council members introduced a measure to do basically the same thing. Let's take a listen to one of the older people behind that.
Our bodies and our ability to make decisions and exercise autonomy over them are the most basic expression of our humanity. And without that possibility, we are in fact stripped of our humanity.
Heather, so why would the mayor sign that executive order now when there was legislation, an ordinance here to do the same thing?
Well, this measure was introduced earlier this month, but now the City Council is on its annual summer recess and won't meet again until late September. The mayor said today that the matter was much too urgent to let it wait until then. Although I think I should mention that Alderman Rossana Rodriguez-Sanchez and the others who were at the mayor's press conference today held their own press conference at City Hall yesterday, no doubt turning up the heat on this very, very hot button issue.
And the mayor's been at odds with some of those members, so does that play into this move?
It absolutely does. It is, I think, nearly unprecedented for the mayor and Alderman Rodriguez-Sanchez to share a podium. The two have clashed bitterly over the proper role of the Chicago Police Department and how it should be funded. But today, they were all smiles, an indication that the issue of abortion in a post-Roe world will really blur those lines and make for new alliances at City Hall going forward.
And as I understand, Heather, there's another policy the mayor's considering to help those seeking an abortion. What is that?
Well, there's a companion measure that was introduced by the progressive alder people back in July. It would set aside $1 million in 2023 to help people obtain abortion care through nonprofit organizations like the Chicago Abortion Fund. The mayor said today she wasn't prepared to commit to a dollar figure, but she said she would include some funding for that in next year's budget. And we're about to go into budget season, so it will no doubt be a topic of much conversation.
All right, the mayor getting all that done before heading off to Lollapalooza tonight, we presume. Heather, thanks very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Heather's story on our website, where you can also find a link to the full executive order. It's all at WTTW.com/news. It is one of the oldest communities in the entire state. Located on the shores of Lake Michigan, Waukegan is a working-class neighborhood about 30 miles north of downtown Chicago. Recently, it has become a hub for Planned Parenthood doctors in Wisconsin to treat their patients, since that state halted abortions following the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. Chicago Tonight's Joanna Hernandez and producer Acacia Hernandez spent the day in Waukegan, and Joanna joins us now. Joanna, you spoke with a doctor who has been traveling to Waukegan. What did you find out?
Now, Paris, Dr. Allison Linton has been traveling once a week to the Waukegan clinic to treat her patients. Now, she says patients cross the state lines for a variety of different health services throughout the day. She mentioned that this month has been tough, but is grateful for the partnership between Planned Parenthood of Illinois and Wisconsin to provide abortion services. The Waukegan Health Center has been open since 2020 and is now working with several physicians from Wisconsin. Dr. Linton also stressed the change in women's health care access puts a strain on patients in Illinois seeking services.
We focus so much on the patients that are traveling from the restricted states. And that is certainly important when I think of the patients that are traveling from Wisconsin and having to navigate crossing state borders for healthcare. At the same time, this impacts all patients. So this is certainly impacting patients in Illinois as well. So patients that previously had access to services in their own state, those services are still there, but because there are more people coming from out of state and utilizing those services.
We also looked at Waukegan's demographics. The majority of the population is Latino, about 52%, while 20% are African American. We went to ACES, a nonprofit immigrant service organization. The founder, Maria Elena Jonas, tells us years ago, people had to travel to Chicago to find services. Now ACES are assisting residents in the community with citizenship, legal services, and a variety of educational classes. Over the years, Jonas says the Latino community have become more involved, especially the younger generation.
Two of my workers here, they just came from, newly graduate from college. And the first time ever I heard, like, I want to do more. I want to learn more to do more for my community. The curve we wanted to reach, right? Like the place we wanted to be. And I'm like, yes, come and let's talk and give you the resources that you need to give you more knowledge.
We learned there's a big push for a healthier neighborhood in areas considered to be food deserts. Greentown Grows is a grassroots organization where residents came together to build Mandalay Fuka Garden to provide fresh produce to the community. We're told it has evolved into a collaborative with businesses and organizations in the area. One of the programs helps families build their own garden right in their very own backyards.
Referrals from area organizations, and we work with families such as you.
Yeah.
And we install a garden, and we have someone who will mentor you, and we've had that mentorship going for 3 years now.
And I have a daycare in my home, so for the kids to have access and learn about the process, you know, it's all the science of it, the engineering of it. You know, they came and brought the pieces, and everyone had to help and put it all together. You know, so it's just been the whole process of watching it grow.
Down on Grand Avenue, Waukegan to College is helping the first generation population head to college. The organization was founded back in 2009, preparing students whose parents didn't get the opportunity to attend. We're told the program helps students and families navigate the school system from 5th to 12th grades.
This year, 100% of our high school seniors, the class of 2022, are admitted to college, and almost all of them have full financial aid.
For these families to be able to say, my child has gone off to college, or my child has graduated from college, my child now has a career at Google or Accenture, you know, at LinkedIn, is something to be very orgulloso about.
Aaliyah Plummer is the first member of her family to attend college and says she started the program in high school and now attends the University of Illinois Springfield.
I don't know where I'd be without this program. I don't know if I would have gotten to college and maybe dropped out or something like that. But I would say it's absolutely essential. They provide you with the resources that you never thought were there. And not only that, they teach you how to be independent and how to use where you grew up from and your own culture and things like that to be successful in your careers.
There's also been a big wave of development coming into Waukegan. Locals say they're pushing for new entrepreneurship and business opportunities. One development on the way is the American Place Casino being constructed in the Foundation Square area. The casino is expected to open in 2025. In the meantime, a temporary casino is being built close by, opening around mid-November. The chief operating officer says they are expecting to provide up to 1,000 jobs while working with the community.
We're having a career fair where we're introducing ourselves to people in the community who are looking for careers with a company that's just getting started, so they can come with us and be on the ground floor and grow with us as we grow. And so of that 800 people, we probably hired 100 this week just for people that we've told, come on in and see us, talk to us.
And the job fair will be going on all week long along White Oak Drive. Now, coming up, we speak with the mayor of Waukegan. But first, I send it back to you.
Thanks, Joanna. Riders have slowly returned to the CTA post-pandemic, but they've returned to a host of issues. Among them, a noticeable slowdown in service and a breakdown in reliability. Also, ghost trains or buses that are scheduled to arrive at your stop, but then they never do. And in the last 3 weeks, there have been at least 2 major stabbing incidents and a host of attempted robberies on trains. Here to talk about all of these issues are Eric Dixon, president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 308, Leslie Honore, Managing Director of Strategy and Communications for the Center for Neighborhood Technology and the Transportation Equity Network, Joseph Sweeterman, Professor at DePaul University, specializing in public policy, transportation, and urban planning, and Amy Reinell, Executive Director of the Active Transportation Alliance. We also invited CTA President Dorval Carter to be here, but he declined our invitation this evening. We do appreciate the 4 of you joining us. Amy Reinell, I'll start with you. First off, a lot of complaints right now about these so-called ghost buses. What exactly are those?
Yeah, the schedule is showing that a bus is going to arrive. It's been scheduled to arrive, and it just doesn't show. So the transit trackers aren't reflecting the level of service that CTA is able to provide right now. And they're compromised on staffing. The pandemic has not been easy. Funding has not been easy. And these are really, really hard jobs. Bus drivers have really hard jobs. You can hear more about that from Eric. And there's it's not something that's only happening here in Chicago, but it's really pronounced here right now, and it's affecting our service in ways that's really making it hard for those of us that rely on transit to get where we need to go when we need to. And we're hearing stories from the Transit Riders Unit, from consumers taking action for transit about the different ways people are having to spend money on much more expensive alternatives to get where they need to go.
Right, folks
so
needing
it's definitely
folks waiting around and then at the last minute deciding they have to take a ride share, which is much more expensive to get where they need to go. Joe, so we mentioned all these issues, the unreliable service, the ghost buses, crime. What are the culprits here?
You know, it's really been an interesting summer because transit is bouncing back. We're seeing some recovery, especially on the weekends, on the bus routes especially. But there's sort of a ceiling on where transit's going to get back to unless we can solve these fundamental issues, particularly on CTA trains. And, 10 o'clock news with violence so far dominating on L platforms. People aren't quite ready to make the plunge to make those trains a daily part of their lives. And we got to fix that because we're extending the red line. We're rolling service back. I think the CTA knows this is issue number one.
Those public safety stories dominating the headlines in recent weeks. Leslie, are these service interruptions being felt all over the city? Are there certain areas where they're being more acutely felt?
They're absolutely being felt all over the city, but I think where the impact is heaviest is where we have disenfranchisement, where we have people who've been oppressed, where we have Black and brown communities, that it's not an option to take a rideshare service. They are reliant on transit. So when we hear stories of older adults in Belmont Cragen waiting for 2 hours for a bus that never shows, can't make it to their doctor's appointments, can't get their medication, end up having to walk. And when we think about compounding that with hot temperatures in the summer, cold temperatures in the winter, it becomes a larger issue well past transit when it really comes to quality of life and equity and services that should be available equitably for all Chicagoans.
Public transit certainly a lifeline for many Chicagoans. Eric Dixon, CTA President Dorval Carter, says he's having a problem hiring enough bus drivers, train conductors, CTA staff members. He can't keep up with people retiring or being sick. How come it's so hard to find enough workers right now?
I don't believe that it's hard to find enough workers. You just have to change what you have been doing. You can't continue to do the same thing you've been doing time and time again. It's not working. I've been saying something to the CTA for over a year and a half that we need to get to, to a point where we're doing some things differently as far as hiring. We at a place where it's business as usual. You can't discharge people if you're not replacing people. You can't, people are retiring, but you're not replacing them.
So are you saying there are a pool of workers available and the CTA just isn't doing a good job hiring them?
Yes. Their practice of hiring people, first and foremost, it takes too long. And I've tried to tell them they need to streamline that a little bit. We're trying to get bodies in here. So you can't continue to fire people. I get it if somebody does something wrong and you believe, hey, Eric, you did something wrong. But now we're at a time where we're trying to keep people, good people that got 10 or 15 years. I have people now, for whatever reason, they changed the testing practices, can't pass the practical test now. So you moved after a third time to discharge those individuals. But some of them got 15, 16 years of experience operating trains, and you still want to get rid of them because of your new testing practice.
All right, so you're saying they're unfairly getting rid of a lot of people, and that's helping lead to some of the staffing shortages they're having. Amy, right now, I want to get to this issue of public safety and crime. The CTA's talked about putting security guards on trains. Is any of this making any impact at all?
There hasn't been a lot of transparency around what those security guards are doing. I ride the train all the time. I haven't seen them. So I think there's an important piece of this puzzle is transparency around what's happening with those dollars. But also there's a connection between the operator shortage, the slow and ghost buses, and safety. Having decreased an unreliable service leading to decreased ridership means there are fewer people around to create safer environments. So I think we need to speed up our buses. We need to get our scheduling back on track and be really transparent about the opportunities for safety that we're creating. And there are a lot of great ideas out there that the Transportation Equity Network has been pushing for that I think could really improve conditions for people riding and feeling safe as well as operators.
All right, Joe Sweeterman, aside from finding a way to hire more staffers, what are some of those ideas to turn this system around right now?
Yeah, we are seeing that we have to get out of our comfort zone a little bit. We have a transit system where connection between Metro PACE and CTA still isn't what it needs to be, despite having Ventura. People need to feel like the system's seamless. And I think on our bus system, we know that people are more comfortable riding because they see that driver there who's kind of a gatekeeper. On the trains, I think we have to rebuild confidence that, that there's a way to notify security when problems occur. And the CTA is still, trying to figure out how to do that with its staff shortages. But transit's got a promising future. We just have to raise its public image here, and a lot of work to be done.
Leslie, from your vantage point, what can the CTA do to stop this service disruption and to stop having folks wait, as you mentioned, in Belmont Cragen for 2 hours for a bus?
I think echoing what Amy has said, really transparency. It's a chicken before the egg conversation when we talk about increasing service, increasing speed, making it more available so more riders can be on buses and trains. What we do know is after the pandemic, we've had a lot of people who commute has changed, so they're not riding the same way. And that has our transit system open a lot more where things can happen when in the past they may not have because we had much more presence on there. I think it's important that when we talk about safety that we don't get overly reliant on police and security guards as ways to police and then ultimately criminalize people who we know are having issues. There are cities like San Francisco and Philadelphia who have great ambassador programs that really focus on crisis intervention, skilled people to talk to, some of the unhoused people who use trains as a way to get shelter, and to really prevent issues happening by being a proponent of human need and finding ways to connect people to the services they need instead of just letting things happen and then criminalizing the people that are suffering the most.
All right, so some alternatives to having just security guards there. Eric Dixon, your union manages all the train conductors, the bus drivers. Do they feel safe, and what do they believe needs to be done to increase public safety on trains and buses?
Listen, at the beginning, I've said time and time again that we need to bring back our own policing here in the city of Chicago, just like New York, DC, Atlanta, Toronto. All these locations have their own policing on their transit system. Right now, people feel like they can do whatever they want to do on the CTA, and they're doing it because they don't feel nobody's going to do anything to stop them. We need to bring back conductors, if nothing else, on the red and the blue line in the subway so they have an extra pair of eyes out there. Because back in the day when we had conductors, we didn't have the violence that we have now because you had somebody there, another person, another set of eyes to help the situation out, to get police there in a quicker manner.
All right, well, a lot of issues to tackle, and our thanks to all of you for being here. Eric Dixon, Leslie Honore, Joseph Sweeterman, and Amy Reinell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And up next, we go live to Lollapalooza, so please stay with us.
Much of the story of Latinos in America is that of entrepreneurship. About 5 million Latino-owned businesses currently exist in the U.S.
Predominantly Latino communities often bear the environmental burden of heavy industry. Residents of those communities say they have a hard time making their concerns heard.
A Chicago-based photographer has a personal understanding of immigration, and he has spent years documenting small businesses.
The forces of gentrification can make people being priced out of their neighborhoods feel powerless. But the founders of Lolita's Bodega say residents have more power than they think.
Lollapalooza has officially kicked off. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to descend upon Grant Park for the 4-day music festival. Angel Ito spent the day there and joins us now with more. Angel, what's going on?
Hi, Paris. Well, right now I am standing in the press tent, and I spent the day here talking with several emerging artists from across the country. And while none of them are from Chicago, they all say they're very excited to be performing at Lollapalooza. Among mainstream artists stand the next generation of Lollapalooza headliners. And while some have been making music for the past several years, for others, this is their first time performing.
I've never been to a music festival as just a watch and to enjoy. Like, we got these wristbands today and it says like artists on them. Like, the fact that like we're here doing this stuff like with an artist band on for the first time is like, this is so crazy.
Thing I've ever had on my wrist.
Yeah, this is the fanciest thing I've ever worn, but it's surreal. We're very, very blessed, very thankful, and we're just excited to keep it moving, keep it going. We're excited to perform tomorrow too. It's gonna be sick.
Meet two hip-hop heads from State College, Pennsylvania.
It's Joey Valance and Bray.
Goddamn.
That's what it is.
They say it's both of their father's influence that inspired their commitment to create a new type of hip-hop comprised of sounds from the 80s, 90s, and now.
My dad is Filipino, and he grew up in like New York City, and he was like an old school b-boy. He was like doing head spins in the subway with like a Puma tracksuit on. Like, he was that guy.
My dad got really, really, really into hip-hop because like nobody else was sort of listening to it, and he was very, very into like rap, jazz, funk, R&B, so that's all I grew up with, was stuff like that. For us, that's like our childhood and what we grew up with, so it's like fun to bring it around back and make it something that's sort of ours, and just do something that we really love and respect, you know? And so it's just like us making really genuine music that we love just because it's fun.
Being an artist that kind of had their first moment in the pandemic, it's so rewarding seeing live reactions to the music I'm creating.
Other up-and-coming artists share similar sentiments about performing, like Rosie from New York, whose single Never the One took off on TikTok, sparking her music career.
And particularly with Chicago, I really haven't spent a lot of time here, and there's something really magical about stepping into a crowd and knowing the only thing you know is yourself and your music.
Redvale agrees. The Maryland native performed last year during another artist set, but the 18-year-old took his own stage for the first time this year.
It's really cool because I feel like I got the opportunity. I'm still pretty new to performing. Like, I started performing for the first time last July, and since then and now, you know, I got some time to develop like my live show a little bit. I've gotten a lot better as a performer, so I think that reflects on the crowd back to me. Every time I do it on stage, it's like, it feels like good again. It's like exciting again. It's like, it feels like the first time I made it again.
While it might seem like they've hit it big being featured in this year's music festival, Joey Valance and Bray say it's just the beginning.
And Lollapalooza is the biggest thing that we've done thus far in our career, so it's exciting, man.
It's very exciting. It's amazing. Like, we would have never expected to ever be here a year and a half making music in an apartment.
Now, Lollapalooza continues in Grant Park through Sunday. Visit our website to stay up to date for my continued coverage throughout the weekend. Paris, I send it back to you.
So, Angel, I guess that means you're going to stay there and check out some of the headliners tonight, huh?
Yes, it's so fun. I'm going to see Metallica later. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm so jealous. All right. All right, well, report back to us tomorrow if you can still hear, because they're pretty loud. All right. Have fun out there. Thanks, Angel.
Thanks, Paris.
And as Angel said, Lollapalooza does continue in Grant Park. Through this Sunday, you can visit our website for continued coverage. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, we're one-on-one with the mayor of Waukegan, focusing on a new casino coming to the area and much more. Is the country heading towards a recession, or are concerns being overblown? 3 economists share their thoughts.
We're here to help them in their language.
And how suburban libraries are welcoming Spanish-speaking Latinos with open arms and open books. But first, some more of today's top stories. Another salvo in the internecine battle over who will lead the Illinois Democratic Party. Today, Mayor Lightfoot says she backs Congresswoman Robin Kelly keeping that job after Governor J.B. Pritzker has repeatedly said he doesn't think Kelly has raised enough money and he wants someone else to take over. But today, Lightfoot said she thought Kelly had indeed raised plenty of money for the party.
$4 million in less than a year. But fundamentally, what I would say is what Democrats should be focused on is unity.
And Pritzker says he wants State Representative Lisa Hernandez to get that post. Democratic Party committee persons will vote on a leader this weekend. Lightfoot herself doesn't have a vote on that committee. State health officials say they will prioritize one dose of the monkeypox vaccine to those who are at high risk. The state has received about 7,300 doses of the vaccine and designated 4,600 of those to Chicago, on top of the 18,000 doses the city has received separately. As a result of the limited supply, the state, much like the city, will administer just that one dose of the two-dose vaccine to high-risk individuals for now, until more vaccine comes in. Illinois is currently reporting 401 monkeypox cases to date, 85% of which are in Chicago. 700 of the country's newest citizens took their oath of citizenship at Wrigley Field on a beautiful sunny afternoon. The naturalization ceremony is the second to be held at the stadium. The newly naturalized citizens come from 91 different countries. Today, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, himself the son of Haitian immigrants, welcomed the new Chicagoans home.
In Chicago, we boast communities that bear the name of countries from all over the globe. And so when you travel here to Chicago, when you travel to America, you're not traveling from home, you're traveling to home. So welcome home, new citizens.
And we now go back to Joanna Hernandez, who has spent the day in North Suburban Waukegan as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Joanna.
Now, Paris, joining us now is Mayor of Waukegan, Ann Taylor. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I want to start off. You've been in office for just over a year, and now a major development is coming to this area, a casino. There's people for it and against it. What is your take on what a casino can bring to the community?
Well, the casino can bring jobs. The temporary casino should bring about 800 jobs. The permanent one should bring more than that, somewhere around another 1,000. But it also gives revenue to this city that we haven't had before in terms of a long-term revenue source. We also have food and beverage taxes from it. But most importantly, it is a catalyst for development, not only in that area, but for the entire city of Waukegan. It's literally helping put Waukegan on the map.
Now, Waukegan is home to a large Latino and Black population. How are you aiming to work with these communities?
Well, we're making sure that they are included when it comes for construction jobs, when it comes for jobs within the casino, but also that, again, they're attracted to our community and they want to come and work and play in this community. It's a great community.
Now, we spoke to ACES, who said there was a lot of misinformation surrounding COVID vaccines. How would you say Waukegan is faring at this point of the pandemic?
We're doing pretty well at this point. I think a lot of misinformation was initially put out, but I would say at this point in time that our community has decided that it does want to be vaccinated because we want to be out and about again. We're a community that loves to have festivals and, walk along our lakefront. So we want to be vaccinated. We want to be included in all those things. And like I said, I think initially with a lot of people, we were fearful. We didn't know the information. But now that that's, passed, I see a lot of people getting vaccinated and wanting to be part of our community again.
Now, we also learned that Waukegan's Planned Parenthood clinic is serving patients coming from Wisconsin as the need increases. What impact do you see what impact do you see is having on Waukegan?
Well, Waukegan is welcoming to everyone. And the same thing for a woman's choice. The state is a pro-choice state now, and it will always be a pro-choice state. And I think having that option for women to come here and have whatever procedure they need to have done. But we also have to keep in mind that Planned Parenthood is a very big part of our community in terms of other educational programs. And that's important.
Now, you are the first woman mayor of Waukegan. How does that feel? And talk to me a little bit about the projects that you're working on for the city.
So, as the first female mayor, obviously I'm very conscious of the fact that, I want women to follow in my footsteps. I want women to understand that, I was fortunate enough to have other women who preceded me that tried to break the glass ceiling, but it's broken, ladies. I want women to come out and follow in my footsteps in the future and understand that we're important in politics. Our voices matter. And I'm so proud to be the first woman of this city.
Well, thank you, Mayor Ann Taylor, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, coming up, we speak to a local organization who's raising awareness on gambling. But first, I send it back to you.
Thanks, Joanna. Is the U.S. on the verge of a recession? Well, the country's economy saw a second straight quarterly decline in gross domestic product. That's an indication that the National Bureau of Economic Research could declare a recession. But the Biden administration is pushing back, saying the economy is headed in the right direction. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the economic news is not necessarily bad.
It's important to look beyond the headline number to understand what's happening. The contraction in GDP was driven primarily by the change in private inventories. Today's report shows continued expansion in consumer spending overall and in services in particular.
And joining us to talk about the latest economic news are Michael Miller, an associate professor of economics at DePaul University, Preston Caldwell, chief U.S. economist at Morningstar Research, and Mark Weisbrot, co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Welcome all of you back to Chicago tonight. Mike, I'll start with you. Slight decline in GDP for 2 straight quarters. It has folks uttering that R word. Would you technically call this a recession then?
I would not. There are 2 definitions that people accept when it comes to recession. The older one has to do with 2 consecutive quarters of decline in real GDP, and that's the idea that the only thing that matters is the movement of GDP over time. But the NBER, which dates the peaks and troughs of the business cycle, for the past 20 years has had a much broader definition of what a recession is. And it has to do with GDP and sales and employment and production and incomes. And when you look at everything except GDP, the economy is not in recession.
Mark Weisbrot, do you share the Treasury Secretary's optimism here, echoing what Mike Miller said? There are a lot of indicators that things aren't necessarily so bad right now.
Yeah, I think what Michael said was a very good explanation of why the NBER doesn't use the kind of rule of thumb, textbook, Econ 101 idea of a recession, shorthand, 2 quarters of decline in the value of goods and services in the economy. But I think the biggest threat to the economy right now is that the Fed will actually do what it has done to most of the vast majority of the economic expansion since World War II, which is put an end to it by raising interest rates too much. And that's what we have to watch out for. This whole idea that we may not be able to have a soft landing, the metaphor that's always used. I mean, that's not quite right. I mean, people think, well, you could have a couple bumps in the runway, but the non-soft landing alternative is a recession, which could easily throw millions of people out of work, and that would be a big mistake.
Preston Caldwell, what about that? The Fed yesterday announces its second rate hike in the last several months, up another 0.75%. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell again saying that he wants a soft landing here for the economy and to ease inflationary pressures. Could it hurt the economy, as Mark Weisbrot is saying?
Well, first off, I just want to echo the remarks you heard earlier. I don't think the U.S. economy was in a recession in the first half of 2022, and I agree with Secretary Yellen that the decline in GDP was driven by the noisiest components of GDP, such as inventories, also net exports in the first quarter, and there's a lot of other reasons. But recession risk is on the horizon, especially for 2023, because I think that's when the impact of the Fed's rate hikes will be fully felt. But I don't think there's any reason to panic. I do think any recession is likely to be mild and short-lived and followed by a swift course correction from the Fed in order to jumpstart growth again.
Mike Miller, is there any indications that these rate hikes will have an impact on inflation?
Well, they always do in terms of slowing down the mismatch between demand and supply. And the whole idea behind raising rates is to reduce the amount of interest-sensitive spending and get it more in line with supply. My wish is, of course, that the Fed would continue to do that, but that there would be more incentive created maybe by the federal government in terms of regulation and tax policy and so forth to try to increase the supply, to take actions to create more goods. And then there you have fewer dollars chasing more goods, and that would be the best possible solution for inflation.
Mark Weisbrot, you're saying that the Fed coming in here and doing this echoes what they've done for the last several decades, and you say it's really cooled off economic expansions. What impact will this eventually have on mortgage rates, credit card rates, other bank interest rates?
Yeah, these things have really triggered. The Fed has triggered rate hikes triggered recessions with their interest rate hikes. And that's a very serious problem. And, you know, the other problem, well, yeah, it'll bring down, I mean, obviously, if you get a recession, the Fed will reverse course and lower interest rates and bring down mortgage interest rates and so on. And, you know, it's already had an impact in the other direction right now on the housing market. But this is really, I think it shouldn't be really acceptable for people, you know, like Larry Summers to say, well, we might have to bring unemployment up to 6%, and he's talking about a recession. And this is considered an okay thing to bring down inflation a little bit faster. First of all, most of the vast majority of the increase in inflation we've had in the last 18 months has been in items, you know, like gasoline, where it was 59% over the last year. You know, things that the Fed interest rate increases are not going to impact anyway. And, you know, it's the Ukraine war. I mean, if we really wanted to do something about that, we could, you know, negotiate. I mean, I'm not saying that the Russians would negotiate. We don't know what they would do, but we're not trying. We're not trying to find an end to that war. And that's a big problem for a lot of other reasons as well. But the point is that you've got people talking, actually causing a recession in the United States, the Fed doing that, raising interest rates enough to do that, as though that there's a reason to do that to bring down inflation. And I mean, again, the vast majority of that inflation is not anything that's impacted. It is not the, you know, this is politics too, because the argument that we have a problem with inflation, the inflation hawks are saying, well, it's because we spend too much money in fiscal policy. And of course, the Fed's interest rates were too low for too long. But again, if you add all that up and you look at economists who have estimated that, like Moody's, you're talking about a small percentage of the increase in inflation.
And you're saying Summers basically saying the cost might be bringing unemployment up to 6%, where it's relatively low right now at 3.6%. Jobs are relatively plentiful. Preston, you basically said that 2023 might be the time where we do see a slight recession, although you believe it'll be short-lived. So how would you advise folks to make personal financial decisions right now in anticipation of that?
Well, look, I just want to say I completely agree with the remark that supply problems cause most of the inflation that we've had thus far. But regardless of what's caused high inflation, it's still the case that, you know, as Michael alluded to, that if you bring down demand to calibrate with where supply is at, that's going to help solve the inflation problem, whatever the original cause of it was. And I think from a risk management perspective, the Fed really has to worry about inflation becoming entrenched right now. And if it doesn't do that, then we don't have to worry about unemployment being 6%. We have to worry about it being in maybe the double digits like it was in the early 1980s recession. So I do think the Fed on net is going about the correct course right now.
So you're saying take action now to avoid perhaps worse problems or unemployment in the future. Mike Miller, how would you advise folks making personal financial decisions right now in anticipation of perhaps a future slowdown?
Well, there's going to be a slowdown based upon everything we see in the interest rates, and that's the intention of the Federal Reserve. So the one thing is that people, if they have jobs that are extremely secure, then they don't have to change their lives that much. But anybody who's on any kind of a cyclical income that's tied to goods such as in housing, automobiles, furniture, appliances, and so forth, where their demand for those fall during a recession, then they've got to make sure that they don't get themselves further in debt and that they have a cushion of money to fall back on during that slowdown period.
All right, a lot to look into right now. Our thanks to Michael Miller, Preston Caldwell, and Mark Weisbrot. We appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
And up next, we check back in with Joanna Hernandez, who is reporting live tonight from suburban Waukegan. But first, we take a look at the weather. Now we check back in with Joanna Hernandez, who has spent the day in Waukegan as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Joanna.
Now, Paris, we're now here with Elizabeth Thielen, Senior Director of Nicasa Behavioral Health Services. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to start off, as I mentioned earlier, the American Place Casino is coming to Waukegan. What kind of conversations and role has your organization had surrounding this new development?
Well, anytime there's any expansion of gambling in a community, it's important for all of us to come together to say, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for us? Because if we're looking at trying to maximize the benefits, the only way to do that is to minimize problem gambling.
Now, for someone who isn't familiar with Nicasa, what kind of help is available specifically relating to gambling?
We've actually been the only treatment provider since 2002 in Lake County, and we have individual and family counseling and group counseling, as well as telehealth, so people can get phone or video counseling from the comfort and privacy of their own homes.
And what is the treatment like?
The treatment is really powerful. So it's important to feel understood and to feel connected. And people who experience gambling-related harm feel very isolated and ashamed. And so to come together with people who understand you and care about you is really powerful and very healing.
You know, when we were driving around, we noticed that there was a lot of gambling slots inside of restaurants, inside of convenience stores. Do you see the need for these services in the area?
Absolutely. We've always reached the needs of the community. We've always expanded, and so we see that it's all around us. It's even on our phones. And so it's hard to get around your day without being faced with some type of gambling. And so if somebody does choose to gamble, it's important that they can look at their own risk factors and decide, is this for me? And if I choose to do it, how can I be safe? And then, more importantly, what do I look out for? And if I experience any difficulties, where do I turn for help? And that's where we come in.
So people, if they want to play, they're going to play regardless. Are you saying learn how to be safe when it comes to gambling?
Right. Yeah, choose whether or not it's for you. And if you do choose to participate, figure out how to do it safely and what to look out for in case things go awry, and reach out for help right away. And it's never too early to ask for help. We'll talk to people who've never gambled before and think they're going to try their hand at it, right up through the people who've experienced serious gambling-related harm.
And the youth have also been involved, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
This is really cool. So underage gambling is predictive of gambling problems. So we're trying to prevent underage gambling, but also youth are harmed when there's an adult in their life that experiences gambling problems. So we've got a remarkable group of young people who've come together, and they are doing a social media campaign. They're making songs, they're doing artwork, and they're using all these really creative means to raise awareness about problem gambling in the community.
And were these teenagers, were their families, or did they know people who would or had gambling problems?
Right. Some of them actually have family members or neighbors that have experienced problems, but some of them are just these kids who are just like, hey, I want to improve the community. What can I do? And they learn the research, they get the call to action, and then they just take it and run with it.
Now, the temporary casino is set to open this fall, just a few months away. What more would you like to see from the developer as it incorporates itself into the community?
Well, like I said, it's never too early to have the conversations about preventing problem gambling. So every step of the way to say, how can we implement some safer gambling practices? How can we encourage people to be safe? How can we encourage people to reach out for help if they need it? So all along the way, every step.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, Paris, back to you.
Yeah, Joanna, before we let you go, I know you were focusing some of the day looking at the ways that Waukegan is trying to expand entrepreneurship in the town. Tell us a little bit about those efforts.
No, I really want to talk to you about this awesome supermercado. It was a supermarket called Gonzalez, and inside the owners also created this really awesome coffee shop, and upstairs they also have this gallery where they're hosting different kinds of classes. They're from the neighborhood, which I thought that was really cool, and I want to give them a shout out because they allowed us to work there all day. Also, before we leave, I just want to show you this awesome background where Waukegan Marina and Harbor. I mean, how beautiful is this? This is the first time that I actually see this, and actually right across from me I can see Chicago, so that's pretty cool.
No doubt a beautiful spot there, and a really interesting town, a fun town, beautiful harbor there. Joanna, thanks very much. And up next, suburban libraries that are going beyond books. But first, a look at some events happening this weekend. Plenty of things to do that are not Lollapalooza this weekend. Between 2000 and 2016, 6 of Chicago's suburbs flipped from majority white suburbs to majority Latino. That's a reflection of a broader trend of immigrants bypassing the historical port of entry neighborhoods of the city and settling directly in the suburbs. And as the demographics of these communities have evolved, their institutions have had to find new ways to serve and engage those residents. Producer Erica Gunderson checked out 2 suburban libraries to see how they're going beyond just books.
Mi bonita sombrero, my beautiful hat. When we have new families that are coming here for the first time, I want them to know that this is their library, this is their space.
Like all social institutions, the public library has had to evolve with the times.
People come here for passport services. People come to get their blood sugar, cholesterol screenings. People check out our library of things items, which include sewing machines or telescopes.
And as Latinos, especially immigrant Latinos, have increasingly settled in Chicago's suburbs over the years, suburban libraries have developed ways to better serve their changing communities.
We're here to help them in their language and that we can also celebrate their cultural background as well.
At the Rounds Lake Public Library, a monthly book club offers readers the opportunity to discuss literature in their own language.
A lot of them, what they have told me is that they feel like this is an era of space and a time where they can just dedicate to themselves. We talk about the book and different point of views of everybody within the book and then in their lives, because we always find something to relate to.
Y ver que ya la biblioteca nos manda la información, toda nos la manda en español, pues a veces ese es como algo que pone uno de barrera, a veces el idioma, ¿verdad? Entonces tener esta oportunidad en nuestra biblioteca de venir a buscar los libros muy interesantes en español, pues fue una de las cosas que más me motivó para venir.
Round Lake Library Head of Community Engagement Sandra Lopez says during the early days of the COVID pandemic, patrons increasingly turned to the library for help with problems that went far beyond the stacks.
For example, the school district became virtual. A lot of the families in the school district didn't have computers or didn't know how to use computers, and they also had a language barrier. So we had our partner over at the school district reach out to us, say, hey, can you guys help? And we developed computer classes that we were able to give to parents in need.
In West Suburban North Lake, bilingual adult reference librarian Carla Alba says the staff develops its programming based on input from the community.
That means that they are trusting us more in terms of what they ask for, and if they do need something that they don't know whether we provide it or not, they feel like that they can come in and ask for it.
North Lake Youth Services librarian Jackie Cerrone says she draws upon her own upbringing when selecting resources for the children who come to her library.
The other day I had purchased books about El Cucuy, which is like a childhood myth, you know, that us, especially in the Mexican community, we grew up listening to, which are now in story times.
North Lake patrons Fiona Ayala and Noemi Guisar Miranda both say they began coming to the North Lake Public Library to find activities for their children. But now they keep coming back for themselves, too.
So I was born in Mexico, came here, and just recently I took my citizenship test. And the fact that they offer that program so you can study for the test, it was one of the most amazing things.
Sorprendente que en ningún lugar celebran el Día del Niño y aquí lo celebran. El Día de la Madre, el Día de los Muertos, y hacen eventos y cosas alusivas a esas tradiciones que nos hacen sentir orgullosos de nuestras raíces.
Both Ayala and Guisar Miranda say they often recommend the North Lake Library to friends and family, which librarians say is key to building trust in the community.
A lot of the time we feel that patrons will come in because they've talked to a family member or a friend.
It just makes me feel great that there is a place where you can feel comfortable, if there's people that are still willing to help you out when you know you need the help. And it's a library like a place that I never would have expected.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Erica Gunderson.
And you'll find more about the libraries you just saw on our website. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Week in Review. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and